In this video, we're going to be talking about the top 10 decks in Marvel's Snap. These decks have been designed and determined using a variety of different sources to ensure that you're statistically getting the best decks in the game. We're going to be talking about 10 decks in total, 7 of which are going to be ones that you are perhaps familiar with, ones that will give you success on the Conquest and on the ranked ladder, and 3 will be hidden gems with very high win rates and relatively low play rates to give you some contrarian options to dominate the meta. If you'd like to support the series, hitting the like button is the best thing you can do. It's free and it's really all that YouTube cares about. And if you're not subscribed, maybe consider subscribing because we do this every single week and I hope that this content is helpful for you. With that being said, let's get started. Now, I'm trying to refrain from doing too many high evolutionary based decks because I think everyone realizes they're good, but they're part of the meta. And the major change here is that you have Hamjaw at a 57% win rate, which is using the new Spider Ham. If you don't have Spider Ham, the traditional deck has Spider Ham out, Dracula in, but in this case what you're doing is you're actually playing the Spider Ham, which can be played into the Lockjaw to cycle things more effectively. Honestly, this is a very strong list, considering that you have nothing but great cards to hit, great options with high evolutionary, most importantly, the opportunity to turn the opponent's highest cost card into a pig is huge. This deck particularly performs better in Conquest because when you are repeatedly kind of taking out core components of your opponent's deck via the pigging, ultimately it's very effective, and it's one of the best decks in the Conquest meta, and we do believe that it will be nerfed via patch soon. But in the meantime, if you're looking to get some tickets, this is one of the ones you can turn to. Spider Ham has continued to have an immense impact on the meta, and we see that in Bacon Bounce. Now, Bacon Bounce is essentially a bounce-based list. We're using the Chavez variation for Conquest specifically to give you an option in the event you're getting waived on turn 5. However, you do have the Beast Bounce-based list. You're prioritizing playing Beast on top of a Kitty Pryde to make Kitty Pryde free, making it a free play every single turn. And you do have the Spider Ham, which the advantage to this bounce list is that you can play Spider Ham on turn 1, piggy whatever they have there, and then you play it afterwards when you falcon it or when you beast it or whatever. And the nice thing about that is not only are you running up the hit monkey or whatever else bishop, but you're also getting opportunities to pig things at different points in the game. So you can hit, like, you know, their wave on turn 1, because like on turn 1 you hit their wave, it was their highest cost card in their hand, and then next thing you know it, you play it on turn 4 and they have their 6 drop and you just piggied that too. So it has a really good success rate at 62%. It's the highest, most successful deck in the current meta. So if you're looking to basically play a deck that is very borderline oppressive, this is the one for you. So I actually featured Sauron and Shuri last week in the hidden gems section of this very video. I then released a full Conquest based guide where I talked about the deck and showcased the deck in Conquest, where we went completely undefeated in the match. And I think the word's starting to get out that Shuri and Sauron is legit. And the thing I really like about this deck is it's pretty budget friendly. There's no real like series 4 or 5 cards. It's all series 3 now with Sauron and Shuri being dropped down. You might be missing a piece here or there, but the likelihood is that you might have everything. And I think you have probably a very inexpensive and very good deck overall. The nice thing about this as well is you can play something like a Shuri on turn 4, skip turn 5, and then you have the She-Hulk into Taskmaster play. Remember that when you play Sauron, something like Ebony Maw becomes playable again later in the game. So there are so many added synergies here, and Sauron is aging like fine wine. It's definitely a deck that you can take into Conquest mode. It is very reliable and one that you can use to get to Infinite if you're trying to finish it this season. Would you believe it that Destroy is firmly back in the meta? Its play rate is increasing day by day. Percentage wise, it's becoming one of the more popular decks that you're seeing out there. Its win rate is still hovering at about the 55% rate, so it's not the best win rate deck out there, but it is performing very well. In fact, if you are playing in Conquest, the fact that you're running something like a Null gives you some counterplay towards a Shang-Chi, because if you play your Death out on turn 5, for instance, and they Shang-Chi the Death and you play your Null just takes that Death energy and absorbs it, right? So there's a couple very cool plays, and like you can't kind of doubt the tech available in this deck. You have the Yondu, you have the Killmonger, you have the Shang-Chi, so you have tools to deal with many different things. Shang-Chi with the big cards, Killmonger with the small cards, but namely what you've got here is the Deadpool package, which as you run up Deadpool, you are going to actually run up the Venom as well when you eat that Deadpool, which gives you an opportunity to play the Deadpool later on. The nice thing about Deadpool versus something like a Kitty Pryde, it can stick the landing on turn 5, allowing you to play a Null on turn 6. So there's a lot of added synergy here, and as you continue to pilot the destroy deck, you start to realize how it's performing. This particular list takes Deadpool in, and oh man, I almost forgot its name. Sabretooth is out. I forgot Sabretooth for a second. If you don't want to play Deadpool, you can substitute Deadpool out and add Sabretooth in, and you've got yourself a very reliable deck. It honestly blows my mind that people continue to sleep on Black Bolt and Stature. These cards got nerfed by 1 each, which was pretty significant. This was like by far one of the most popular archetypes in the game, but ultimately people are now just not playing the deck. They don't think it's that good, and it is really good at a 50% win rate. It performs very well in Conquest. In fact, the Enchantress, the Shang-Chi, even the Polaris to some extent give you some options tech-wise to deal with some of the situations you'll be facing in Conquest, especially when you're facing the same players over and over and over again. If you don't have Jeff, Nightcrawler is a very natural synergy here, so take Jeff out, add Nightcrawler in. You definitely have Nightcrawler, and you've got yourself a fantastic deck. If you don't have Nebula, Sunspot can go in. So ultimately, I think that this is a relatively inexpensive deck. I know Jeff's here, but again, Nightcrawler's a good sub, and it puts a ton of power out. It really does. And the one thing that I think needs to be improved on in the future with future releases is you got some counter synergy with Black Bolt discarding the lowest cost card in their hand. It hitting a rock from Korger Rockslide feels a little bad. You'd rather discard a card, but it does counter the deaths, right? So if there's a death there and it's a 0 cost, you're knocking it out. But then your opponent should know to play it earlier anyway. But regardless, Bolt and Stature, do not sleep on it. It's still a very good deck in the current meta. It's always fascinating to see an archetype ebb and flow as much as Patriot. Right now, it's ebbing. People are interested in Patriot, and the highest win rate edition of Patriot at 57% is Iron Patriot that uses Iron Lad, Iron Man to basically allow Iron Lad to get value off pretty much anything it hits, including Mr. Sinister, which is one of the best hits you can get. Brood is also incredible with Iron Lad, because if you well, you're just going to get a whole bunch of 6s. That's pretty damn good. And of course, we have the newly buffed Dazzler, which performs exceptionally well with Ultron. Now, this deck does suffer a little bit against Spider-Ham, because Spider-Ham is going to take out your Onslaught, your Ultron. You don't care too much about the Onslaught being taken out, but the Ultron is definitely problematic. That's why you actually run both in this list, because if they Spider-Ham, if they hit the Ultron, you still have a win condition in the Onslaught, but if they hit the Onslaught, you still have your Ultron, right? So that's worth noting here. It's also worth noting that if you want to play Standard Patriot, there are lists available. However, Standard Patriot drops in win rate by about 4%. It's hovering in like the low 50s range. So it's still winnable. It's still good. And if you like Patriot, you know, you can take out the Iron Lad, the Iron Man, stuff like that, and run a more traditional Patriot with like the Thing and etc., right? However, it does have a lower win rate, so please be aware of that. This is currently the top dog in Patriot, and specifically with the Dazzler, I gotta tell you, I really like it. Sera controls probably the deck that no one's talking about, that's slowly decreasing in popularity, that low-key has by far the best win rate in Marvel Snap. You're hovering around 60%, give or take, and it's because it's just good. It's just good. And ironically, in Conquest, we're seeing less wave than we were prior, and that's giving bounce an opportunity to come back a bit. Like, we're seeing more destroy and other things. So like wave's taking a bit of a step back, and that gives bounce an opportunity to really shine. That's why it's had such an amazing win rate. And Sera Control loves that too. I mean, turn 5 Sera, if they don't have wave or Sandman, then like, what do? You just pump out a ton of power, you throw down a massive hit monkey, you have the location correction of the Scarlet Witch, you have all the answers you need, including the Kitty Pryde, right? Which I think is really good. Kitty Pryde's always fantastic, running up your Angela Bishop. I love the tech of Killmonger and Nova, it never gets old. And honestly, because you're bouncing so much and you have that Killmonger, something like a Lizard feels pretty good. It feels pretty good out here, and you just put up a lot of power. This version does not run Bast. There are versions running Bast to give a little more value to some of the cards here, but ultimately, this running at a 60% win rate is a very good option for players that want to have like Conquest runs where like they're never out of it. They always have a chance to win a game, because with Sera Control, and unless they're playing Sandman or Wave, as I mentioned, generally speaking, you have a win condition. You just got to find it. And now we're on to our hidden gems of the week. We've got 3 decks to talk about, and the first one is Toxic Disruption. I love this list. So I actually took this list in Conquest. I did a video about it some time ago, and it continues to be awesome, continues to be tweaked a little bit. It's running a 61% win rate. Now, again, low play rate, but I think people are not expecting it It truly puts up a ton of power. It deals with the high evolutionaries with Luke Cage, which is great. So if you hate high evo, you got an option here. I love the fact that you have the Viper Sentry play. I love the fact that you have a Viper Hood play, or you have a Hood Carnage play. You have a Sentry into Carnage eating the Void. And I mean, you have the Debris, which disrupts their ability to play, but you can feed into it with Carnage. You have the Hazmat. It's not a greedy list. Honestly, it just feels like a fun deck to play. Now, if you don't get the draws and like things don't quite work out, it's very combo centric. So I think the major thing with this deck, when I played like 100 something games of like this deck specifically. And I think that the thing I learned was that learning when to just retreat when you don't have your pieces is totally fine. Because when you have your pieces and the board states to your advantage, there are very few decks that can compete with it. I personally play a variant with Valkyrie in it, which I think is really fun, but it actually technically, statistically, has a slightly lower win rate. So this one is going to be a great one if you're looking to be very disruptive and take your opponent by surprise in Conquest and on the ladder. If you're anything like me, you are anxiously awaiting Cozy's next Rocks and Hawks variation. Now, before Cozy ruins the meta with Rocks and Hawks again, we have Rocks and Fury, which is currently the leading candidate for a very strong Nick Fury Rocks and Hawks style deck. Now, what you've got here is a deck that I really like. You do have, of course, the Devil Dinosaur, which I never get sick of. I love DD. I would love to put Devil Dinosaur in every single list, and you're going to see me playing a whole lot of Devil Dinosaur on Twitch. But realistically, I love the addition of Nick Fury here. You have the Agent Coulson Marie Hill. You got that card generation. You have the Zabu. I love the addition of Shang-Chi here for the Conquest ladder. And of course, you have your Darkhawk, your Cosmo to protect your Devil Dinosaur, and your Darkhawk, of course, and Mystique, the ultimate combo card for, you can follow up Mystique with, Devil Dinosaur with the Mystique, and then you can actually play Darkhawk either way, like if you have Zabu on the board, or you can Darkhawk and Mystique. You have so many different options depending on your game state. It's running a 57% win rate currently. I like Maria Hill in it as well, but it's probably the most cuttable of the cards. But realistically, Nick Fury got buffed. I love Nick Fury. I play a ton of Nick Fury, and I'm going to continue doing so because I think this deck is really good. And if you're looking for a Nick Fury Rocks and Hawks style deck, this is one you can check out. Okay, so this is one of my favorite decks that I featured in a while. I'm calling it Affordable Reveal at a 57% win rate. It is a true gem because honestly, it has cards you probably have being played in a way that you know how to play. And if your opponent doesn't have a Cosmo, you just clap their cheeks. And I really like that, okay? And even if they do have Cosmo, you got some workarounds, right? You can add some value here and there. I really love the addition of Ebony Maw. I'm a believer in Ebony Maw, and I think that with Ebony Maw being added into a deck with Wong, White Tiger, Odin, it's just beautiful. You'll notice that Doctor Doom doesn't make the cut here. Doctor Doom, it's so heartbreaking to see Doctor Doom get cut from a deck like this. He can still be played in it, honestly. Like, you can take even Korg out, for instance, right? You can take Korg out, you can take Nightcrawler. You got options, right? I like the Nightcrawler into the Angela, but what I tried to do here is I wanted to give you guys a deck, some of you guys that are at lower collection levels, that does still perform, that you can also say, like, hey, I got Kitty Pryde. I can take Korg out and add Kitty Pryde or whatever it is. Some of the cards you might have, you can make some adjustments. But overall, this is a good deck. It's performing well at 57%. It's a good starting point that you can then make some adjustments if you're at a relatively low collection level. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit the like button if you'd like to support the series. And as I said prior, I'd appreciate your subscription if you're not subscribed already, because we do this every week. We release videos every single day. And I got to tell you, I consider myself so fortunate to have your support. We'll see you in that next Marvel Snap video.